Hello, and thanks for joining me for this week's worm composting video. As always, I'm starting off with my regular tote bins, and I have the tote bins where one has the bubble wrap completely over the top, and this is the one that has the bubble wrap. And based on the consistency of the castings in here, they still feel really good. They have that weight and feel of castings that are getting to the final product. So I'm still going to move these towards harvest time, but the castings are super wet. So last week when I commented as to whether or not it was a good idea to put the cardboard, it seems like it wasn't a good idea to put the cardboard in this bin over to the side underneath the food, because it did hold a lot of water, but it's like the whole bin held a lot of water, and I can tell that the castings are really holding on to moisture more so than they do at this stage of the game. So I know for next time, do not put any castings completely underneath the food, to mix it throughout the bin to give the cardboard a chance to soak up the moisture throughout. So my gut feeling last week turned out to come true. These castings are definitely wetter than they were before, but not too wet where I can't handle them. They're not at that muddy stage that I've dealt with before with regular bins. So after thoroughly mixing everything in, because I couldn't leave the cardboard in just one side, I'm going to give this a smaller feeding than I have been, just one piece of watermelon, because I still have quite a bit of watermelon to get through for them before covering it up. Again, I'm doing this largely because I don't want to add too much water, and also because I am taking the bin towards the last 3 to 4 weeks, and I want to encourage the worms to break down the cardboard. So once I fed it and covered it up, this bin is set up for the next week. And that brings me to my other regular tote. Now this one I don't fully cover all throughout the bin. So this one did have a lot less moisture, but still held on to quite a bit. The area that was uncovered felt better than the area that was covered, but it still was more damp than it had been. It usually is drier than that. Once I got over to the area that was covered, that's where I felt all the extra heaviness from the moisture it was holding on to. So again, this bin was just like the other bin. The castings felt great in terms of where they are in the timeline of harvesting, but they had a ton of moisture. In this one, I could see how the worms had gotten all throughout and how they had balled up in one area, which was pretty cool. But there was so much moisture in that cardboard concentrated into one area, and it's like the bins just held all the water that had been put in. So maybe next time, if I do feed the bins and put the cardboard in on one side, I won't add the extra water. That could have been it, but either way, these castings felt super wet. So I'm going to do the same with this bin, that I did with the other bin, and just make sure that the cardboard is mixed all the way through. I don't want clumps of it sitting anywhere in case it was just from having a concentration of cardboard that happened. But this bin will also be carried for a few more weeks before I encourage it to harvest. And if I have a bunch of shredded cardboard still in there, but the castings feel like they need to be harvested to me, I'm just going to go ahead and harvest it, because I typically put all of my material that doesn't go through the sifters back into my bins anyway, so it'll just be used for our next round. But I'm going to do the same thing with this bin and give it a smaller feeding, because it is heading into the harvest stage. And once I give this bin a smaller feeding and give it the grit and cover it back up, this regular tote will be set up for the next week as well. Next up is the first of my Vermi bag totes. Now this tote is headed to a harvest just like the regular totes as well. And I did add material to this bin, just like I did with the regular totes last week. So I was hoping that this one was a bit drier than its counterparts, but unfortunately this one held on to a lot of moisture as well. Here I am testing the moisture content, and it's a bit more mushy than it normally is, where it just holds a shape, it breaks apart. And I found the same issues in this bin as I found in the other two, in that the area that had the cardboard was wet and it just seemed that the whole bin. And this is another small worm ball that I found in here. It kind of surprised me that my Vermibag tote held on to so much moisture as well, just like the regular totes, because that's not typically how they function. And I've been finding throughout this whole summer and the warmer weather that we're having extended into October, I'm finding that because it's more humid, I am having such issues with the moisture level in my bin, something I haven't dealt with before, but we also haven't had as much heat and humidity in a long time since I've actually started having my worms. So I'm taking the same process with this one, mixing all the shredded cardboard back into the material. Even though the material feels great, it will be harvested by the end of the month, most likely. So I'm going to give it a smaller feeding than what I typically do to encourage them to break down that cardboard, just like with the other bins. And once I feed it and cover the bin up, we'll be set up for the next week. And hopefully I won't encounter as much moisture in my bins next week's as I have encountered this week, praying for different results for sure. My second Vermibag tote is the tote that I'm working on trying to increase the colony. So I've got extra newspaper and cardboard on the right side of the bin, and there were some worms hanging out on the newspaper, which makes me feel encouraged that they're using that side for what I intended for. Area for them to go to get out of the castings, to break down the cardboard, and to potentially lay cocoons on that side. So I'm really just feeding the one side and almost doing what would look like a migration on that side. I'm thinking maybe I might want to put food underneath all of the cardboard, but I'm searching here trying to see if I see cocoons, and I wasn't able to get it on the camera too well, but I did see some cocoons in the castings and some juvenile worms on the bubble wrap. So that is some good news for this bin. Hopefully they will continue to grow and thrive in the new environment. I think once I harvest my other 3 bins, really 4, because I'm going to do the Vermibag mini with the other totes, but when I do my other bins, I'm going to then mix in all the castings together and see what type of colony size I have at that time. But right now I'm not going to disturb that one side in hopes that they just kind of hang out and chill on that other side. So it's just a really quick update on that bin, as I'm not trying to mess with this bin too much. It got its regular smaller feeding because the colony is smaller, and then this bin as well was set up for the next week. And finally, my 5th bin, the Vermibag Mini. Now in this Vermibag Mini, unlike my other ones, this bag I've been dealing with a lot of beetles and a lot of dryness. And that's because there's so much surface area for the air to get in contact with the castings and the material on the Vermibag Mini, because the sides of it are meant to breathe. So when I take off the bubble wrap, you can see where it is very dry around the outside perimeter, but it's not dry in the center. And last week I gave it a bunch of cucumbers in there, which the worms did get through and broke down quite a bit. So I am going to give it another feeding, but I'm not going to give it a lot of liquid. I used to put a ton in there. For a couple weeks I was putting a lot of large feedings in there, just seeing what the capacity of that the Vermi Bag Mini could hold. But that definitely did encourage a lot of beetles to come in, and I do not like having the beetles in my bag. So I'm not going to give it a larger feeding, but I am going to increase the content level because it is dropping lower and lower. So with this bin, I am going to add water when I add the cardboard. I don't find that I have that same problem of it holding on to too much moisture. And I'm going to add some diatomaceous earth to the material to help with the beetles. It's not as much as it had been for sure. I'm definitely decreasing the population of beetles, but I still just want to stay on top of it for right now so it doesn't explode again. So I am giving it just one piece of watermelon, not really putting too much food in here. And then after I cover that with some more shredded cardboard, I'm going to add some water to this as well to make sure it stays very hydrated in this bag, and then cover it up. And that finishes the update for all of my bins. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching.